Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for spending time with me. So I'm very excited about this. I'm very excited to be sharing this part of my life and this passion, the intersection of my passions with you, like entrepreneurship and Africa, as you know, where they meet and they come together. I'm so excited. But more in a conversation and a dialogue way than in a, this is entrepreneurship and this, no, that's not my style. But yeah, so in this interview, in this conversation, I'm going to be talking to Tapiwa who owns Tapiwa, which is an ice cream business that educates people on Africa using African flavored ice creams. So Tapiwa basically sells African flavored ice creams. And it's really dope, and his ice creams are amazing. He's from Zim originally, but he's been living in South Africa since he came to do his tertiary studies, and yeah, it's been a journey ever since. You guys will hear all about it in the interview, so I hope you guys enjoy it and love it, and pick things up from it. It's a conversation, we do go astray, but I mean, we tell the story of Tapiwa and Tapi. So I'm excited to be sharing an African story with you guys. And
so
that's naturally Tapiwa, right?
I grew up in Zimbabwe, and both my sets of grandparents were in the same neighborhood, because that's how my parents met, right? So we used to rotate from house to house because we lived in the parental homes.
Yeah.
Because my parents were 19 and 20 when I was born.
Wow,
Young. Obviously a mistake. What is contraception? And so I spent a lot of time around big family, on both sides of the family. All the cousins basically, we all live in the same houses.
Yeah.
So my dad's side and my mom's side. And particularly on my mother's side, her mother was very intentional about making sure everybody did everything. She was not used to having children and grandchildren with no skills and can't take care of themselves. And she always used to say, as long as you have two hands, make a plan. Yeah. So we grew up cooking for each other, we grew up doing all the chores, we grew up going into the maize field before school. You wake up, do a bit of chores, get dressed, breakfast, school, come back after school, chores again.
Yeah.
So, and everything was always around the family unit and around the community as the neighborhood as well.
Community element.
Yeah, and even in the way we used to eat, I remember she had a garden space where if you wanted some fruit and you went to go get it, you couldn't just go get something to eat by yourself. Then you had to go pick some guavas, come back to the veranda, sit with everybody. Hey, I brought some guavas for everybody.
Community element.
Community was very important. And same would apply when you went to the homesteads as well, on my father's side.
Yeah.
It was all communal land, and we all chipped in, all the cousins, all the siblings, all the parents put in effort. So I grew up around this idea of, yes, you are important, but the people around you are also important, and equal priority.
And then you feed into each other.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So there's no one like more important, even though you play different roles, they all feed into each other.
Without each person's role, the system doesn't work.
Yeah.
And the roles are rotating as well, so you were never like the designated dishwasher or whatever. Yeah. So then, as I got a bit old, I started baking a lot with my grandmother on my mom's side. So when I say my grandmother, that's what I'm going to be referring to. Because my other grandparents were not really that close because they owned businesses away from home, so they were never really around.
Okay.
Yeah. And then my mom left the country when I was 4, so then I essentially was raised by the grandparents because my dad was always touring the country in film and theatre and touring the continent and the world as well. So there's a lot of my grandmother and a lot of the domestic helpers and other older cousins kind of raised me. So I started baking with grandma, it became like our thing, and eventually that's how we used to bond around food, and like the chicken feet and the pumpkin peanut butter kind of vibes. So when I came to varsity, to UCT, that's 2005, at some point I was now making cakes and selling them to make a little bit of pocket money.
That's interesting. I did that in high school. I was not allowed to sell things
What?
at school.
You're not allowed to
We're
sell?
not allowed to sell things at school.
Oh, but you're still like contraband. I got the good stuff.
I was just like, do the things. So it's like, brought cakes to school for people's birthdays, but you know, there was financial transactions there that the school never knew about. But
Yeah, exactly. So I was doing a lot of that, and with time, moving into sort of that post-grad years, I could afford to buy a different range of ingredients versus undergrad. I was buying the same predictable stuff because of the budget.
Yeah.
You know. And so now I started exploring other cuisines beyond my sort of Zim cooking through my Shona training from my grandmother in the house. So I went a bit Italian, I went a bit South American, a little bit Asian, French a little bit, but not really. And because we always grew up making things from scratch, I've always maintained that aspect of making things from scratch, making things by hand. So like when I do like noodles or dumplings, I don't buy like pre-mix, I don't buy noodles. I make them from scratch with flour and eggs, you know, that kind of thing. And when I moved to Stellenbosch after my PhD now, I had a way lot more time because studying and working are two very different things.
Yeah.
And the way I was working, I had a lot more free time to really flex, and obviously budget now was even better. And
so you completed your entire university?
tertiary studies, yeah. So at UCT, towards master's years, I started making ice cream because I was watching like MasterChef at some point. And someone was using dry ice to churn the ice cream. I was like, we get dry ice in the lab all the time because all our chemical or enzyme deliveries always came on dry ice. So then I told the lady at the delivery store, the lady in charge of receiving our shipments, I was like, save me some every time it comes. Then I'll go home and make some ice cream. Oh, yeah, that's easy enough.
Who said watching a series is
reality TV is trash.
Who said this? Let's do away with this idea.
So now I was making a lot more ice cream. I may have to just...
No, it's okay. 3, 4. Yeah. So now I'm realizing I could make ice cream at home without having to buy fancy equipment. Yeah.
Because one of my beliefs is I don't like doing things that are not accessible to almost everybody based on money, which means I don't buy things with one job. So I don't own a pasta machine. I can just use a rolling pin because I can make chapati with a rolling pin. I can make tortillas. I can make blah blah blah. I don't own a coffee machine because I can just use a pot. You know, that kind of thing.
So minimalism in a sense.
Yes, no, definitely. Yeah, I'm a minimalist, So I suddenly knew I could make ice cream, and whenever I got a delivery, I would make a new flavor of ice cream. And that entire time, so this is from early masters and to 2 years into my postdoc. So that's 6 to 8-ish years of making ice cream, and in that entire time, I never made a flavor from the continent. Until 2 years ago, I was at a restaurant in Salt River, and now okay, let me not jump that far yet. So I'm making ice cream, ice cream. I'm enjoying it. It's rewarding. It's delicious. It's better than any ice cream I could buy.
Are you selling?
Not yet. So this one I'm not selling. And then 2 years ago, my grandmother passed away. My food mentor grandmother passed away. And a week before that, I had been in Indonesia, and I had seen how they lived there, which reminded me of how I was raised. So that sense of community, togetherness.
The East is
very close knit, and people make things from scratch all the time. People have multiple different jobs. It's almost like a Renaissance kind of existence. You gotta do a little bit of everything.
It's like utopia.
Yeah, right. And people are very happy even though they don't have much. Right? And that's how we grew up as well. We didn't have a lot. We didn't struggle, but there were a lot of kids around, so you couldn't be like boiling out of control.
Yeah. Yeah,
right? I think in total she has a legacy of about 21 grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And I grew up around with 16 of them, in and out, fluctuating, and also cousins from other grandparents would also sneak in and out of the house all the time. And so when I was there, it kind of reminded me of home again.
Yeah.
And I'd gone for so long, so focused on the individual, must get my degree, must get the next degree, must get the next degree. I'd become disconnected to that community.
Does that.
Yeah.
You get to a point where they drive it in you, or not even there, but you being in that environment, it's driven in you that listen, get yourself together, get yourself together. Winning is really about how you progress as an individual and what you do as an individual, but less about the communal existence.
Worse still, it's more about who can you better.
Yeah.
Who can you rise above? Who can you push down for you to? You can't just win while someone else is winning.
Yeah.
Someone has to be losing. So yeah, I lost that sense of community and being in community with even strangers.
Yeah.
You know. And so I got some of that back, and then my grandmother passed away, and I took some time to think about, okay, why am I doing this? This work that I'm doing, I'm not finding it satisfying anymore, because the work that I was doing, I'm an okay scientist. I'm not a brilliant scientist, not even close. That's why I'm saying the PhD doesn't really mean much. As long as you are resilient mentally, you can get it.
I still, I still feel like don't downplay.
No, it's the mental resilience. It's not the difficulty of the science now.
Yeah.
Nah, not at all. But so the work that I was doing was focused on making GMOs. It was focused on making plants that are not from here grow better here. But then I was like, there's so many plants from here that we could be using for the very same reason that we're growing these plants from where, right? Then
but was there, sorry for interjecting, was there research done on the plants from here, or is it you're bettering those plants from outside because there's not much research done on?
It's a bit of both. So one aspect is the legacy of colonization is most of the fruits that we grow here are not from here, right? And then we're talking centuries of agriculture and breeding programs to the point where if you take a wild lemon versus what the ancestors of a wild lemon versus a lemon today, they're very different different plants, right? So if you take like Amatungu from here, it's almost like a wild lemon from then in terms of it tastes more aggressive. There's less flesh, it's more seed. So there are more tannins. So to commercially grow it, very few people are going to be able to eat it because the taste is so intense. But also from a farming point of view, the edible part compared to the amount of seeds, it's not worth it. Why would I as a farmer leave maize and grow this nonsense thing? Right? So there's this long history of that. So even the academic space is like that. Well, we've always studied sugarcane. We can always grow sugarcane to be better. Why would I start studying that thing that no one is interested in any case? So, but some people are now pushing that. And for the last maybe 2 decades, there's been a lot of work on medicinal plants, even drought-resistant plants from here. But I was just at the point where also I was disillusioned by the scientific process in terms of we generate knowledge and information, and you as the non-scientist person will only get access to it maybe 10 years from now. In a book, finally it's made it to an accessible place for everybody else to get to. And by then, what I know is 10 years advanced to what you know.
Beyond that,
Right. So there's like a long delay, and scientific communication has always had this problem, and a lot of different people are finding ways of challenging that issue and fixing that issue. And I realized I can educate people in a different way around the science of the world, around plant science specifically. So I'm now at the point where I'm like, why am I not making ice cream from home? So I've launched the company. I'm saying, guys, I'm selling ice cream now. And people are like, oh, what kind of ice cream? I'm like, oh, it's handmade ice cream. And then I'm like, it's $120 for half a liter. Oh, that's expensive. Why so expensive? I'm like, oh, no, it's handmade. It's really delicious. but people don't understand the difference. If you've never had ice cream made in a home, you've never really had ice cream.
It's like when you're baking. Once you start baking yourself.
Yeah, right.
Buying
like Albany versus like a homemade loaf.
It's the taste is it's like also growing your own plants from I mean my parents at home we grow food so we eat from the garden
outside.
So the taste is different, the texture different, the quality of food that you grow is very different to what you buy in the shops, because obviously it has to last in the shop, and for that to happen there's alteration, there's GMO, there's many different things done, but that really alters overall the taste and the quality and the but
even like plant breeding itself that's the same thing. So you can't breed a plant to give you a certain quality without compromising on different quality. Right? So if you want to make a butternut that's like bright orange, it means you have to increase production of a certain chemical, and that chemical in that plant will outcompete other chemicals, which means the nutritional profile is going to change. Maybe the size of the plant becomes smaller, or maybe becomes bigger. If you want to breed for size, then now you're adding more water into the mix, which means the taste is going to come down. So a small fruit compared to a bigger fruit, I'm sure you've noticed, like the Pick and Pay mangoes versus like the little mangoes from like Limpopo, very different mangoes.
Even the big mangoes from Limpopo taste very different from the big mangoes in Pick and Pay.
So there's always a compromise. Right. So I'm thinking now, how do I get people to understand what I'm doing here? Now I'm finding gimmicks. I'm like, I'm doing alcoholic ice cream. So I was doing like beer flavors, I was doing cocktail flavors, and it was fun, and people were digging it. But it was a thing I was doing. It was a gimmick. I was like, okay, let's try fermenting ice cream. It's just a way of different way of processing ice cream. I'm fermenting it now, and it's still a gimmick. It's not really doing anything for me. And then one day I was in a Zimbabwean restaurant in Soto called Bahari. And on the shelves they had like little snacks from home. They had like peanuts from home, like peanut butter from home, popped mealies, some Cerevita cereal, some Azoe orange juice. I was like, hey, I could put that in ice cream. I wonder what that would taste like. And then I also went by the tax rank and bought some fruits that were in season from across the continent. I was like, let's just see what happens. I went home, made it. And for the first time I made a product that had an emotional connection. I was like, this is it. It was the first time I made something that tasted like home, that was beyond the product. It was like, why have I never made this before? And then I think about it, I start Googling, no one else has ever done this, right? Or in the cabinet. I'm sure people do it in their homes. But not in such a visible way, and not in such a clear way. And then I started interrogating the food space in general, specifically in South African context. And you look at restaurant menus across the country, it's pastas, it's Chinese food, it's Mexican food. And whenever you find African food, and it's always classified as African food, it's never like Xhosa cuisine, it's never like Zulu cuisine, it's always like homogenized into one experience. I'm gonna go have African food, and you have bobotie, you have mkomboti, you have egusi, it's all African food, versus this is from West Ghana.
And it's made by whatever tribe, and
it's a huge difference. And people are always talking about how there's no African cuisine, there's no South African cuisine. I'm like, no, you just don't know about it. You don't care enough to find out about it. And if you look at the agriculture system, same problems. It's all European, it's all South Asian, a lot of South American food that we're growing here. If you look at even our subsistence farming ourselves, we're growing maize. It's not from here. Instead of growing things like sorghum and millet. So then I realized we've got a huge problem. Our foodscape doesn't reflect where we live, but more importantly, the plants that we grow from here are more nutritious in the context of the gut biome of the people from here. They are more responsible in terms of the land nutrient use, because they evolved with the land, they evolved in shittier land, because our land here is fertile, but our water resource is not so great. Right? So the plants from here are usually drought resistant or drought tolerant, versus South American plants that grow up in tropical rainforests, or versus water, things from the belt, the equatorial belt, right? growing them here doesn't make sense.
And I think it's very interesting what you just mentioned about the gut biome and like eating for your gut biome, because you're always told, I'm personally very interested in nutrition as well. It started with my grandmother, my great grandmother being sick, then my grandmother being sick, and then passing away, then having just disease in the family, and like research from that stemmed down from, then my dad got into it and eventually trickled down to us. But you're always being told eat whatever's in season, right? Like the first easiest step to start getting healthy is start eating whatever's in season and eat local.
Whatever's going around.
Yeah. But when you then, I think it's also very interesting that making that link back to plants. Okay, what is growing local? Is it actually local?
It's locally sourced, but it's not local.
Yeah, so I think that's actually very interesting what you're mentioning in terms of the because I'm really thinking about it, like when you go, I don't know if you know about these things they call blue cities around the world, blue chip cities, something like that. These areas where it's not the exact blue chip something, but it's areas where like the eldest communities live in, like in the world, like the longest surviving eldest communities. So like you get a lot of them in Italy and across Europe, you get quite a lot of them. Across the East, you get quite a lot of them as well, and they studied very well. But I mean, in Africa, they're not studied well, and it's not that you don't get them. You get old people. I mean, if you go to Limpopo, you'll see the eldest of the elderly women still getting up every day and going to their farms and farming and doing what they know is routine. And these are people that are at 100, they're not blind, they're not taking medicine, but they've lived on a certain diet, eating meat, eating carbs that those are things that they tell you to stay away from. But somehow these people eat those things that they tell you to stay away from, and they still manage to survive, and their health, not only survive, they're thriving in health. So it's like, then that, for me, that's always been a question of like, what's happening there. But I think making that link with plants and how plants are altered is also very interesting.
Yeah, even if you think about that rural kind of living, the way I grew up around like a rural kind of living is a lot of the time you'll be eating a lot of plants that are not nutritionist plants, but they're medicinal plants.
Yeah.
So you don't necessarily have to wait to get sick to be taking medicine, right? The kind of food that you're eating can be your medicine all the time. So you're doing a lot of preventative medicine as opposed to reactionary kind of medicine, right? And even in that context, I remember my grandmother would say, "Oh, you have a stomachache, boil some guava leaves." So something that's right there that you grew, you know exactly what's in it.
Yeah.
And it's like that old knowledge and wisdom around things, or
the traditional. I don't know if we should call it traditional, but there's a word that's just English. My cap has been reached.
But it's oral knowledge. Yeah. So there's a lot of that kind of information floating around. So after all that, like interrogating the work that I was currently doing, or I was doing at the time, rather, and there's also looking at the foodscape. Even in Zimbabwe, there's some aspect of that where African things, local things are seen as poverty things, struggle things, and once you make it, you have to distance yourself from that kind of eating, that kind of thinking. We don't use clay pots. That's for, what's the word? They even associate that with being like not religious. So that's for like spirits. So you must cook in a metal pot like a good person.
You don't use these.
Yeah?
You don't
use this kind of
you
stuff.
You don't use these anymore.
You know?
Like, you move away from it.
Right. So there's a lot of damage that's been done to the collective self-esteem around our practices in so many different ways. So, like, even for me, our clay pots, they're so important to me because we have a clay pot for fetching water, then you have one for storing water, you have one for cooking pap, you have one for cooking veggies and greens, you have one for cooking meat.
Vendor people also.
Right? We have one for brewing beer, you have one for storing beer. You have one for fermenting milk, you have one for storing the fermented milk. You have one for cooling liquids, you have, because they have different shapes and how they ventilate. Even the ones for the beer and fermenting have a small neck so that there's no contamination. So the science is happening.
There's science.
There's science happening.
There's science.
Right? It's got to
behind
use
all of
spout
it.
to release the whey from the milk so that only the curd stays behind.
Yeah.
There's amazing stuff.
It's
right?
just not studied.
It's not documented properly. It's not
Yeah.
appreciated. If you look at Moroccans, every Moroccan house has a tagine. They cook in the tagine. And people buy tagines to say, I'm going to make my Moroccan food in my tagine because that's how Moroccans do it and I want to be authentic to that experience. But we are like, nah, I want Le Creuset. I want a tagine. I want Carol Boys.
Yeah.
Whatever, right? That's a sign of you've made it and you're moving away from things you did out of struggle and necessity. But look, ironically, white people and whiteness is coming to those things, to say organic, to say free range, locally sourced, single origin.
You're preaching. You're preaching to me because I agree with that sentiment fully. I mean, just looking at I'm gonna give an example of permaculture. There's this new word. White people have
Gentrify the shit out of things.
Yeah, so it's like there's this word called permaculture that is newly coined. It's making way.
New concept.
Yeah, this new concept. It's making way in Australia. It's making way in parts of America. People are leaving their corporate jobs to go fully into this. Permaculture is planting local fruits and veggies, natural fruits and veggies in your garden and eating straight from that. And then now they sell to their communities, they trade and bottle their communities.
You're like, what do you mean?
Entire system. It's like, isn't that what we were told? It's primitive.
I'm educating people. I'm empowering people. I'm healing people through this food. And because ice cream is so universal, anyone has some kind of association to ice cream. Even if you don't like it, maybe you like sorbet. But frozen treats, even if it's not ice cream, maybe shaved ice at the beach, maybe bombies, maybe freezes, whatever, lollies. And because it looks so universal and it looks so neutral, you can't be prejudiced against it. Right? So if you look at my menu outside, you're like, oh, that sounds weird. But if you just walk in and see the pretty colors,
You're attracted.
you're attracted to it, like, oh, let me taste, what's in that? But that time is already too late, I've got you. You get to taste it, you're like, it's millet? My belly.
Are you for
You're like,
real?
are you for real? In ice cream. Versus, oh, there's a guy who's making my belly ice cream. Already in your mind sounds weird because you know my belly only has pap.
Yeah,
Or it's boiled.
yeah,
You're like, no, that's weird. Or if I tell you it's okra sorbet or granita,
You're just
like,
gonna
that's
think of the
slimy
slime.
stuff.
Yeah.
no, miss me with that. Right? And that was the challenge I was facing the last 2 years because I was selling online. Only adventurous people or people who don't know about those foods would try it because they don't have any bias around that food.
Yeah.
Right? But actually, black people who know it were less likely to buy that ice cream flavor because
Yeah.
they think they know the full range of this thing. If we take impepo for argument's sake, the first time people see impepo on my tasting menu, they're like, no, this is only for spiritual things.
Yeah.
Right? What are you trying to do here?
It's not even known for
Right.
eating. Yeah.
I'm like, no. Speak to Khoi people, speak to the Cape Malay people, it's used as medicine. Speak to Afrikaans people, it's used as insecticide, it's used to stuff mattresses and pillows. Speak to even other people, burn it thinking they're using it. So people burn impepo thinking they're burning sage. They're not the same thing. Right? Sage, you burn it to drive away spirits.
Yeah.
Impepo, you burn it to invite ancestors into a space. That's the actual original function of impepo, is to bring in a good vibe. But because someone came with this legacy of saying sage from South America, sage from North America is burned to ward off spirits, this is African sage, therefore it's doing the same job.
Yeah.
Right? And that's how we lose this history.
Lost in
right?
translation.
So now, even Xhosa people will tell you impepo is to burn away, to cleanse the space. Right? Because the legacy has been wiped off, the slate has been cleaned off. Right? And then I'm telling you, no, it's not to burn away spirits, it's to invite your ancestors into it. Yeah, no. Now you're white explaining to me. I'm like, go do some research on it. You'll find out. Somewhere along the line, someone changed the narrative on your behalf. And that's another problem with a lot of our things, that they're compared to a European standard. So it's always, there's a fruit from Zimbabwe called matoe,
Yeah.
right? And the European word for it is either snot apple or African chewing gum, right? So people make it a point of comparing it to European standards, right? Even if we look at, let's take Asian food or Italian food. You call it gnocchi, you call it pasta, you call it pappardelle, you call it ricotta, you call it sushi, you call it whatever name they call it.
They gave it.
Right? But when you come to Africa, then you say, oh, it's like African gnocchi, oh, it's African sushi, or it's African...
You don't own it.
Quinoa. You don't own it. So we compare it to Europeans and we make it easy for them to assimilate.
Yeah.
They come, they declare on our behalf to say it's African chewing gum.
It's like what we do with our names.
Yeah. Oh, I'm Tubbs, I'm Tubbs, I'm Tubbs.
Yeah.
I'm Tubbs, I'm Tubbs, I'm Tubbs.
Yeah.
Right? So now even in this space, I'm changing how I speak about my ice cream and about my foods and my flavors. When people ask you, what is this thing? Or I say it's chara. What's chara? It's chara. No, but what is it like? Like chara. I can tell you it's a little bit nutty, it's a bit sour, it's a bit sweet. But I won't tell you it's an African dumpling. It's chara. You're gonna have it, and next time you speak about it, there's this thing that they make called chara and chapi. Have you tried it? Oh, what is it? It's chara. Right? And chara becomes a universal word. It's not a Shona word anymore.
Yeah.
It's a word.
It's how you identify things in.
And that's how you export things. Otherwise, if you keep exporting, say it's African this, African that, we're always going to be a token. We're always going to be not the norm.
Yeah.
It's the same with shwe versus African print.
Yeah.
Two very important language choices.
Very different.
If you say African print, you've now reduced the whole continent to one fabric.
Yeah.
When you have Kente, you have shwe, you have what we have in Zimbabwe, actually don't even know the name.
I was about to ask, actually.
Right? So even our language choices, we are so behind that we need to reform all that, right? And that's where the magic of what I've seen with Tapi. So the original vision of selling ice cream and what it's actually doing are two very different things.
So it's taught you a lot in the process about owning yourself and owning Africa and your heritage and your culture.
Definitely.
How has it been educating people? How do you feel every day closing your store knowing that I've just sold to? How does it feel selling to people who identify with the food, right? And then how does it feel also to educate someone completely new who has no idea of the food, like educating a white person versus like educating someone from Zim, who's tasted it but has never thought about it in a sense.
So it's interesting. You get a class of different kinds of collaborators. I call them collaborators. Because when people come here, often I learn a lot more than what I'm teaching.
Yeah.
Because for the week, I've got a certain range of flavors. So it's not a script, but by the end of the week, I know what I'm talking about a whole lot more.
Yeah.
So there's nothing new for me to really learn and benefit from the process. But if you then tell me about your experience, and then the next person comes and they tell me, next person comes in.
Yeah.
I'm teaching the same content to different people, but each person is coming with a different curriculum. Right? So I'm constantly learning all the time. And so you get a certain kind of customer, and that's across gender, sexuality, race, immigrant, local, whatever, right? You find you have your ignorant black people, your ignorant colored people, Indian people, Southeast Asian people, income brackets. So they come with prejudices. So ignorant, by ignorant I don't mean lack of knowledge, but like a willful choice to be ignorant about things.
Okay.
Right? So they come here to prove a point sometimes, to say, oh, I know more than you do about this thing. Or what is this African ice cream thing you're doing here?
Yeah.
You know, African ice cream is Italian, like, I'm from Italy, it's Italian, Actually, no, it's from China, by way of Italy. But the Italians make the best one. No, they make the best version of Italian ice cream. The Turkish people have a very different kind of ice cream.
Yeah.
Indian people, very different kind of ice cream. In America, you get like New England kind of ice cream. You get soft serve. You get like Ben and Jerry's kind of ice cream.
Yeah.
So to say you make the best ice cream is bullshit because there's no one kind of ice cream.
Yeah.
So what I'm doing here is just a different version. It's not better, it's not worse. It's just a tool to teach people about foods, right?
Yeah.
So that's how you get that kind of customer. Then you get the kind who is excited to learn about themselves.
Yeah.
Like, I can't believe that my people can do this kind of stuff. Because they're so used to their middle class kind of eating, they don't really have any connection to their roots.
It intrigues something in them.
Yeah, they're like, we're trying to reconnect to their people.
Yeah.
Even if their people are in Djibouti.
Yeah.
There's now Googling, like, Mama, what did we used to have when you were growing up? Dad, what did you... I actually don't remember. I do that. We don't use those things. Those are poverty things. They're like, no, but actually, it's healthier. And now you're even changing older people. So the people who then live here are now ambassadors for Africans.
So there's a seed planted.
Yeah. Right. So you get that person who's leaving and something has been switched and they're recognizing the value they have in their own identity that they've been missing.
True.
Then you get like the kind of person who came to share because they're so excited about what I'm doing. They want more of this. Or they've come to learn for their own context. So actually I don't do ice cream. Or maybe I want to start an ice cream company of my own and this looks great. Can you teach me? And I'm like, yeah, come for an internship. I do Monday internships where you can learn how to make ice cream and teach you about the flavors and blah, blah, blah. Or I make gin. How can I flex a little bit like this?
Yeah.
I make burgers. How can I... I'm not even in food. How do you... I do textiles. How can I incorporate some of our own culture? I'm like, oh, actually, a lot of our symbology is quite powerful in textile context. Or even some of our plants, you can use them in the textiles themselves, you know. So some people come to learn, some people come to teach, and that's also absolutely amazing. And a different kind of customer or collaborator will come just for the ice cream because it's
hot.
hip, it's trendy. Have you had this place in Orbs, they're doing African ice cream? Oh, what's African ice cream? Oh, let's go Instagram. That's great. They're spreading the message.
Yeah.
Then you get the people like, oh, what are your secrets? I'm like, oh, there are no secrets. I can tell you anything you want to know. Right? Because we are so used to the idea of competing for market share and being a capitalist-driven kind of sensibility. They're like, oh, so how do you distinguish yourself from the creamery or from unframed? Or, you know, I had a person like unframed ice cream, it's the best ice cream. I'm like, oh, great for you. That's wonderful. You found your thing, right? How are you going to secure your customers that they don't end up going there? Or how are you going to prevent the creamery from taking your customers? I'm like, they're not my competitor.
Because that's not what you're doing.
No, but even beyond that, if the creamery now has my kind of food in the menu, I have won. That's the point. We need to normalize our food.
Wow.
So going to have creamery should be the weird thing that you're doing today.
Wow.
Coming here should not be the weird thing that you're doing.
That should be the exotic thing you're doing.
Right.
Like this.
Today we're going to have marmalade from Seville in Italy.
Yeah.
As a weird little treat. But normally my jam is made from Mama Tumu.
Yeah.
That's how it should be. But I'm the weirdo. Coming to African Box, the restaurant in the back here, is the weird thing to do. Oh, today I feel like African food. What do you mean African food? It's food, right? You don't go to Brazil like, the Brazilians like, oh, I want a Brazilian nut today. No, just having nuts.
Yeah.
They have a specific word for that nut. It's just a nut
Yeah.
in Brazil, right? But so we're constantly perpetuating our own othering. We're constantly saying...
We other ourselves.
Yeah, all the time. Hello.
Customers, how does that, what's that feeling you get?
So I think a nice way to summarize the feeling is, at the end of the day, I don't reflect on the money that I made that day that much. I reflect more on the conversations that I had. And for me, a slow day is bad for business in terms of it's bad for my mental stimulation, it's bad for the exchange, from not from the financial sense.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I live in a world that money is important. I have to pay rent, I have to get supplier money, blah, 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 whatever, right? So I'm not naive about that. And I still deal with that aspect of the initiative. But at the end of the day, I'm like, oh, and then this person said this, and that was really cool. And it's been a great way to learn about ego. Like my podcast episode this week is around ego.
Oh.
And talking about how we'd like to assign a moral value to ego, but ego is just ego, right? And depending on what you do with it, depending on what your intentions are, then you can manifest in a bad way or in a good way, right? So without a healthy sense of ego, I wouldn't be here doing this, because that would mean, and I would think a black person is not qualified to do this. A black person can't make ice cream. A black person can't have their own business, right?
Yeah.
That's a bad sense of your ego, right? In the same way, the dangerous side is every single day I'm being told how good my ice cream is. I'm being told how amazing my work is. I'm being told it's so important, right?
Yeah.
Okay, oh yeah, okay, right?
I'm important.
I'm important, right? And I have to think about that every single day.
Yeah.
To remember that the work is important.
Not me.
Not me. Really, really, you can't buy that kind of experience.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that I can pick up on it quite quickly.
Yeah.
When I start, even like part of the community work that I do through Tapiwa is that thing I was telling you that people can, no, I wasn't telling you, people can prepay for ice cream.
Yeah.
Right? So you pay X amount of money, that ice cream is not free. It's for whomever comes to the shop or whomever's walking past and I recognize maybe this person can access this ice cream right now or indefinitely. Whatever financial circumstances, maybe they live on the street. Because I know my ice cream is not cheap.
Yeah.
Rather, it's not affordable.
Well, I think you told us the last time we came here.
Yeah, right? But now, I have this power to choose who deserves this ice cream.
Yeah.
Right? Ego comes in again. And how do you pace yourself to say, well, how can I look at a person and make a judgment based on how they look. To say, oh, you are poor. Let me bless your day. Right? So now that's another aspect of my ego that has to evolve and realize you're making value judgments of people that you don't want being made about yourself all the time.
Yeah.
Right? So now I have to wait for the person to say, oh no, I can't afford them. Like, okay, don't worry about it. It's on the house.
I got it.
Right? Because at the same time, if I say someone has already paid for you, then they receive it as a charity thing and they don't want it. I've soured the relationship. But if I just say, no, have it this time, it's fine.
Yeah.
They see it differently. They see it more as it's a different kind of charity. They don't feel as bad about themselves in that version of events.
Yeah, it's not a shameful sort of exchange.
Versus there's a whole system designed to help you out. That's the worst kind of charity for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So it's been nice it's done a lot for my personal development. Literally since I did a full month of February and then June, July, now going into August. 3 months. I'm a very different person.
Wow.
And you cannot buy that knowledge. You cannot buy that growth.
Yeah.
There's no amount of self-help you can do because it's daily. It's like those 21-day Deepak Chopra meditation cycles, right? It's 21 days of work.
Yeah.
Right? It's 4 months of every single day except for Mondays. I'm here.
Yeah.
Being humbled, being taught lessons, and I have to check myself. I'm gonna be doing like an artist wall here.
Yeah.
And I could already see myself behaving like a boss and not as a person.
Yeah.
Because I have a vision for the art space. And the idea is I don't want people to sell the art, I want people to display the art.
Yeah.
And then you can leave your contact information, your Instagram, your WhatsApp, and people can directly find you. So instead of just having my website doing the marketing for other people, my physical space can do the same work.
Yeah.
Right? And one of the guys hanging his art here, he's been using Prestige, right?
Yeah.
And it's not devaluing the look of the space.
Yeah.
Because he's not removing it properly. And the way I was now talking to him, I could see I'm no longer talking to him as a human being. I'm talking to him as I
boss.
have power in this situation.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, check that shit.
Yeah. That's important.
So it's, you can't buy the lessons. You can't buy them. It's so
It's
invaluable.
through experience.
Yeah. Such intensive life knowledge in a constant supply for free. I get paid to do it. I get paid to learn. I get paid to improve myself. So as much as it's doing some good for people,
Yeah.
I'm benefiting more from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. And what do you think is your highlight? Like, now you've just reached 2 years. What's been your biggest highlight? Like your biggest turnaround point for you?
Day one. People like to wait to celebrate their success, right? People like to wait until they make their first million, or they get their first magazine article, or they get their first whatever, right? And we undersell, undervalue what it takes to say I'm doing this. I'm starting this. Whatever that thing is, whatever you're starting, just to take that leap.
Yeah.
Even if it's just my hobby. The moment you say I'm doing this for a greater purpose, the moment you say I'm doing this to make money, I'm doing it to share my creativity with the world, to heal someone, for me that's a success. And even if I stop Tapiwa right now, even if I go bankrupt thanks to Tapiwa,
Yeah.
it can't fail because it's already succeeded.
Yeah.
It cannot fail. Yeah, so for me that's huge. You can't take that away from me.
Yeah.
And to tie in with that, I urge people to, you need to establish a very good sense of self, a good sense of your identity, why you're doing the work that you do, whatever you're doing in your life.
Yeah.
Why are you doing it? Because people will come along, see the value in a financial sense.
Yeah.
They won't see the cultural value, they won't see the emotional value, whatever the real value is. And if you're not strong in your value system, if you're not strong in your principles, they will come, they will colonize you again, they will plunder you again, they will take your shit again from you, from under your nose. I've had so many offers for investment opportunities, we want you to come partner up with us, blah, 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 blah. And my question is, besides money, what value can you add?
What are you doing?
If you don't have that answer, don't talk to me.
Who?
Because I know why you're here. You're here to make your buck, and then you're gonna move on with my thing. Or it's a fad. It's like kimchi. At some point, kimchi was all the rage, or quinoa was all the rage. People have moved on. Now it's sorghum. Now it's whatever.
The it word.
There's always a buzz thing.
Yeah.
There's always a new superfood. There's always a whatever, right?
I think next is gonna be mhlonyane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's gonna go fucking wild. It's already started going wild.
Currently eucalyptus.
Steams and eucalyptus baths and for arthritis balms and soaps, you know? So if you're not careful, money will take you.
Yeah.
And you end up back in a place where you know, like the lady was there just now who's got the delivery platform.
Yeah.
She was saying something someone else said to me yesterday. There's a hotel in Sea Point that phoned me saying they want to stock their bar freezers, the mini bar freezers for the rooms with Tapiwa. I was like, no, I think I'm okay. And she's like, no, but I'm trying to, uplift your brand and give you access to a high upmarket clientele.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't think you understand what I'm trying to do. I think the final point is, if you're in the position where you can change or evolve the story, evolve our stories, evolve the narrative, do it, because not everyone is in that position. Yeah, and you have the opportunity to use whatever you're good at for the betterment of other people besides you, our community, our different communities. We should do more of that in the world. Even if it's trying to address systematic issues, trying to make systematic changes, or even if it's just simply individual change from person to person. You have a responsibility to yourself and to others, I feel. If you've got nothing to lose, why wouldn't you? Yeah. And there's actually a lot to lose. We've already lost a lot. Yeah. So you've got all to gain. As opposed to with nothing to lose. You've got so much more to regain and relearn.
Thank you, Tapiwa. Thank you.
Welcome.
I hope you visit from this.